Have you ever seen black sand before?
Come on my island tour and I'll show you some.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Around the World with Joshua and Alyssa, and Alyssa is going to tell us more about the island she once lived on.
So a lot of times when people came to visit or they were new to the island, we would take them on an island tour. So I have a little island tour of pictures for you today.
Deal.
Yeah. There it is. So first stop on our little island tour would be Asin Beach, and it was a really important beach during World War II and all the wars that were fought there, but we don't have to go into all the history of it. But it is a really pretty beach, lots of nice palm trees on the edge, and a great walking, running path area. And I took a few pictures of like the foliage. It's really not super green on the island because it's a lot of red dirt, and not a lot of stuff grows well in red dirt actually. But whatever this plant is, it was growing nicely and had a really cool root system. We climbed up the hill that's right beside Asin Beach, and then looked over, and that long boardwalk thing out to that blue thing is called Fisheye, and that's an observatory. So you can pay to go out there, and then you can go down inside that thing, and you can see the ocean like from ocean level, kind of like you're scuba diving. But
that's cool.
Just like in a big tunnel. But it's really expensive, so I never went in there. I would just snorkel out to that spot and like swim around. And I saw sea turtles out there, barracuda out there, lots and lots of fish and octopus. The sea turtle was my favorite though. I did like swimming around with that for a while. It had just kind of like landed in the area, and so typically if you went in the afternoon you could see him. So I went a couple times. When I took my family, we saw the barracuda. And that made my sister really nervous, so we swam away the other direction so she didn't have to hang out with them. And if you keep driving around the island, you get to see this really beautiful sign, and we have a picture there too.
Oh yeah, we do.
This is another village on the island. All of the cities are called villages just because that's more typical of the island lifestyle. So this is the village of Pee. And you go a little bit farther and you get to this. Do you know what this is?
I do.
Because you've been there.
Yeah.
And if you look at the back of it, maybe you're not exactly sure, but how about from the front?
Whoa, so
Definitely a submarine. And it's very long. That's my little sister Anne standing in front of it when she came to visit. We took her on the island tour. And that's a submarine and a great museum that talks about World War II and the battles that were fought and the different locations around the island and how important all of it is. It is a really cool museum. I went there lots of times, and I really liked how they had this interactive map that you could like watch how the battles happened. So it would like light up in different places and stuff, and you could watch how the Japanese and the Americans fought out the war. There's still a lot of remnants from the battles, like bunkers, and they're great for short people. Kind of bump your head if you were much taller than my sister. But they're built into the hills right alongside the water so that the Japanese could hide out and then be prepared to battle the Americans when they came to take Guam back. And this is one of your pictures. They have lots of guns right along the coast too, so there's a couple spots to stop on your tour around the island. And here's a famous bridge right at the base of one of the bays for the edge of Guam. And there's actually two of these bridges. They're just kind of fun to look at. And this is from the fort at the top of the hill from where those bridges were. This is a Spanish fort, and it's still up there. It overlooks a really pretty bay area from when the Spanish were there way, way, way a long time ago. Way before World War II and all of that. They were some of the first people there besides the people who were originally there. And then the next stop probably on your tour would be this nice view of Cela Bay, which was one of my favorite places to go hike. So you would stop a little bit farther up the road from here to actually get to the trailhead, but this was a great overlook spot. If you weren't going to hike all the way down there, you just wanted to look at it, this was a nice spot. And the hills are really pretty like that, all rolling, and then the ocean just past that. It was really beautiful and very unique and very warm.
Yes, very warm.
We don't have tons of flowers and such around Guam, but I did see this flower randomly one time and was like, oh, that's really pretty. So I took a picture of it. I don't know anything about it, but I just tossed it in there anyways because it is part of Guam. One of the really pretty stops too is this little area that has like lots of little kind of like tide pools. So when the water is high, these pools will fill with water, and then they have these little huts around. And they're in more of a traditional kind of feel with like big windows, so it works great. If it's raining, you can go stand in there, but it's still nice and cool because it's all open like that. Or if it's hot and sunny, but you still want to cool down, you can go in these little pavilions. Here is the black sand beach. And I actually only stopped here, I think once on the many times I did island tours because I didn't know where it was, except for one time. Somebody was like, hey, these are black sand beaches. So we found a place to pull off and park. And they literally are black. It's not just like dark because they're wet. Like the sand really is black.
Nice.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty unique.
Huh.
So that's really pretty. And then if you make your full loop kind of the southern part of the island, you'll end up back on top of the hill facing back toward the downtown city of Agana, which would be the capital city for Guam. My school was kind of up toward the right of this picture. The airport's kind of up there too. And then this is kind of overlooking the downtown area and the bay, and then you can see all the hotels off in the distance toward the left, all lit up at night. It is really pretty at night too, and it's a little bit cooler. Not a ton, but a little bit. So there's your little mini tour of island tour of Guam. You got the real one though.
I did.
We did
Except,
do that.
Did we stop and see the black sand?
No, I don't think we
so.
did. I think we're running out of time. It got darker fast or something. But we did see a lot of that. A lot of those different pools and stuff. So I'll show you lots more about Guam next time.
Okay.
But for now, we gotta do some more about our little rascal.
Oh, the guy who was being bad.
Yep.
Okay.
He was trying to skip school with his buddy. And they thought they had all the supplies and they were ready to go. And they thought they were gonna escape in the dark, and somebody started chasing after them and yelling, Tony. Well, Tony ran as fast as he thought he could. He thought maybe if I run fast enough, then they won't get me and we'll still be able to do our trip to the other side of the island tomorrow. But the boys chasing them were bigger, and eventually they caught up, and it was his older brothers. And they kind of stopped him and tackled him down with his friend, and they brought him back home, and Tony's dad was not happy at all. I told you to go to school, and I want you to go to school and learn. That's what all children should do. So you're going to be stuck in your room at the house for 2 days. You can't even leave your room for anything. So he had to go in his room and stay in his bed for 2 days. It felt like the longest time of his life. Finally, at the end of 2 days, his grandma walked in and said, Birbanti, remember that was her nickname for him because he was a little rascal. You can leave your room now. But your father wants you to go to school. Don't you like your school? Don't you like your friends? Well, yeah, but it's not the friends that I really want to have. Those aren't the friends that go to school with me. You really want to have more mischievous friends. But he was happy to get out of his room for a little bit. So he looked around the house and he thought, what other kind of things could he do now that he finally got to leave his room? Well, he came up with a plan. He found his brother. Hey, let's do something so we can catch some mice. Tony was a really smart thinker. He thought up ideas in his head really fast, and they worked. So he had a little plan. He took a piece of bamboo and whittled it out, and then he had a piece of cheese and a pot, and he worked it all out that the cheese was inside, but then if the mouse came in, then it would get trapped inside while it tried to eat the cheese. So he showed his brother this plan, and they talked about it, and then the next morning they woke up and his brother said, Carlo said, guess what, Tony? We have a mouse! So Tony went down with Carlo, and he tipped up the edge of the pot, and they had not one but 2 mice scurrying around underneath the pot. Tony was really excited. So he grabbed a bag, and he put the mice in the bag, and he said, okay, it's time to go to school. So early, said Carlo. "Yep, I missed a couple days, so we better go to school right away." So the boys marched off to school really early with the mice in a bag. Well, Tony was pretty mischievous. They got to school, and he opened the teacher's desk drawer, and he put the mice in her drawer and closed it really fast. Do you think that's a good idea? I don't think so either. And then he sat down to look over the lessons for the day. Well, the teacher got in, and she began her lessons for the day, and she asked for the students to come up and recite the poem for the day. She first called on Tony. "Tony, why don't you come up and tell us the poem?" I don't know it," said Tony. He hadn't studied it. He didn't know it yet. And the teacher wasn't very impressed. Again, he didn't have his homework done. So she called on a few more students. 2 other students came up and they each recited the poem. And then Tony raised his hand. And she said, "Yes, I'm ready to say the poem. I know it now." "Really?" thought the teacher. But he came up and he said it perfectly. She was so surprised. Well, this will be a good thing to be able to tell his parents. He could do some kind things, and he really did learn very quickly. He memorized that poem just as fast as he heard 2 of his friends say it. She sat down at her desk because she was going to get out a paper to write herself some notes for the day, and she opened her desk drawer and was so surprised when she opened the door and out jumped 2 little furry mice out of the desk drawer right into her lap, and she screamed, and all the boys in the classroom started laughing, and they couldn't keep themselves from laughing about how this teacher had responded to those mice in her drawer. And everyone knew who it had been. That little rascal Tony. Well, he thought, Papa's probably going to have to punish me like every single day. I'm such a prankster. And his reputation for being a prankster kept traveling, and lots of people heard about how many things he came up with. Well, ever since that big terremoto, that earthquake, Tony had been thinking about God and about life and about living and dying. And he spent a lot of time with his grandmother. One afternoon, he saw his grandmother sitting in a chair with her necklace of beads here, her rosary beads. And so he came in and he said, "Grandmother, can I sit here and think about God with you?" She said, "Of course you can, Rabanti." So he sat down and he listened as she counted off each bead and she said a prayer or a saint's name for them. And he just kind of thought about it. Was this really the way to get to heaven? Maybe this was the way that you could know to have peace if you prayed like this. But he felt like it was peaceful to be with his grandma. So he decided he would go to her church, to her Catholic church, and he would ask to be an altar boy, so a boy who does different jobs at the church. And he worked really hard. He would show up early, he would do the best of his work that he possibly could, and he was very helpful. And even the priests were very surprised. Wow, this rascal can actually work pretty hard. He asked questions too. Sometimes he would just ask questions, not really of any person, just stand there and ask. So one day he just asked, "How can I get to heaven someday?" And a person told him, "There are prayers you must say in the morning and in the evening. When you say those prayers every day, then you may go to heaven." So Tony thought, well, that must be the right answer. So he did. He would pray prayers in the morning and at evening, but if he woke up the next morning, he'd forgot to say prayers. He tried to say them like 7 times over to make sure he made up for missing those prayers. He tried to ask the priests lots of questions, but they really didn't know many questions about heaven and about God, kind of like he thought they should. How am I ever going to know if I do enough good things, he thought. How will I know for sure that I can go to heaven? When Tony was 14 years old, his mother had a new baby Teresa. And now there were 8 siblings all together. So he had a nice big family. And he thought his little baby sister was the cutest, sweetest little thing ever. And his mother was always such a helper. She always looked out for every member of her family, and she took care of them, and she worked really hard. But a year later, she got really sick with cancer, his mother did, and she died. And Tony felt like his whole life stopped. He felt like there could be no more happiness. And his mother had done everything for him. How could he move on? But his mother had always been too busy. She had never gotten to go to church. So she had been so busy taking care of him, and he wondered if she missed some things or she didn't know things about God that maybe she needed to know. And he wished maybe he could have died instead of her so she could have gotten to go to church or something. Well, Tony got really restless and he wanted to move on to another place. So he started looking around for a job, and he found a job doing something that moved around a lot. He found a job being a conductor for a trolley. So he was around the city all the time, bringing little cars back and forth and people in different ways. And finally, an uncle came to visit, and his uncle was from America. So Tony had lots of questions. Is Buffalo Bill real? Is America just like my country here, like Sicily? And his uncle said, no, Buffalo Bill wasn't real. No, it's not really like Sicily. If you work hard here, you get 10 cents a day. But if you go to America, you can earn $1 a day for some different work. Wow. Where do you think I could go if I went someday? Well, maybe you could go to New York City. We have some family who live there. So Tony thought that sounded like a great idea. He'd love to go there and live. But about this time was time for a world war. And so it was about time for Tony to sign up to be part of the infantry, a part of the soldiers to go to war for his country. So on his last day as a trolley driver, he decided he was going to have some fun because he was still a big rascal. And he took his trolley down some really steep streets as fast as he possibly could. And all the passengers were hanging on as tight as they could and screaming and yelling. He was having a great time. He thought it was a lot of fun. Didn't matter. That was going to be his last day anyways. And he had a great day. And then he went off and joined the soldiers. Well, one day he was preparing to go practice and get ready for the day, and he stepped on a rusty nail. He thought, ouch, that hurt my foot. And his foot hurt more and more and more. And that night when he took off his sock, he noticed like he had red streaks going up his leg and he had an infection in his leg. So he went to the hospital and he got really, really sick. So sick. He was hospitalized and they tried all sorts of medicine and they thought he was going to die. And finally, they got it under control. But he had to stay in the hospital for a whole month while he was getting better. He liked to move around. He didn't like to sit still. So he thought, what am I going to do with all this time? So he thought, I think I'd like to know more about astronomy. So he asked the nurse, can I have a book about astronomy? So she brought him a book, and he learned everything he could out of that book in that month. He learned so much about astronomy, and he thought, wow, somebody designed all of this. There must be an amazing God. I really hope I get to know him someday. But his real dream was to go to America, and you're going to have to come back next time to see if he makes it there. What happens next?
Wow, he has quite the adventurous life.
Yeah, he does. Don't worry, we're not done yet.
Okay. Well, we are going to tell you today about Andrew and Janae Gonnerman. And they are my relatives and missionaries to Japan. And we have had them share updates before. So here is a picture of their family with their little guy, Josiah.
Their complete family picture.
Yeah.
So cute.
Yep, so there they are. Josiah was born 6 months ago and continues to grow. Obviously, he looks like he's growing just nice. He is not crawling yet, but he can turn in circles and push himself backwards. And he hates getting himself stuck.
Oops.
I feel like most babies don't like getting themselves stuck, so that's not a surprise. I asked if they have any memorable or funny experiences in language school. And he said, one time our school went on a field trip. Our teachers told us that we were going to the most expensive restaurant in Tokyo, which we found hard to believe because, why would you do that? There's got to be some really expensive restaurants there. We rode the trains for a while and finally arrived at a skyscraper. We then rode an elevator to the top floor. Our teachers then smiled, welcoming us to the tallest restaurant in Tokyo, which is the same word in Japanese as most expensive.
That's funny.
The food was great and the restaurant looked out over Cela Bay. They didn't send a picture. Oh, before I get this. There's baby Josiah as a really
that's so
guy.
cute.
He looks like he's smiling.
Smiling.
Oh, sorry, I didn't show that earlier. I think this might be the tower they're referring to because this is called the Sky Tree. And it supposedly has the tallest restaurant in Tokyo and it looks out over the bay. And it's
cool.
the second tallest tower in the world, I believe, after the one in Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is the one. If it's not, well, sorry for misleading you guys, but that was a funny story that they shared. The kids are acclimating pretty well to Japanese life and culture, both Jonah and Isla. They both go to schools where people only speak Japanese.
Wow.
Thankfully, they have friends who help them, and their Japanese continues to grow and improve. So that's good. There's probably going to be a time where they know it better than their parents because they're young and they can learn quicker. I asked what the current COVID situation was, and they said numbers began rising again, and Tokyo is in another state of emergency. The numbers are still lower than they are in the U.S., but people are concerned about how quickly the hospitals could fill up. So that's why they have the state of emergency. I asked what the overall sentiment was toward the Olympics, and you know, a lot of us really like the Olympics and like watching them on TV, and we just think they're great. But for the host country that, you know, is probably really scared of COVID and all these people coming in, and who knows what kind of economic impact this is having or had on them, he said most people are against the Olympics taking place.
Wow.
So one poll estimated 80% of the Japanese people were against it, which actually sounds a lot like what happened in Brazil. A lot of people in Brazil didn't like it because the government was kind of corrupt and destroying all these homes to build these big stadiums, and so the people didn't like it. So it sounds like it's similar, but probably for a few different reasons in Japan. Some famous Japanese companies even pulled their advertisements from the Olympics due to the number of people who were against them taking place, which that's really interesting. Prayer requests and praises. Lately, they have had a lot of colds go through their families, so they would appreciate prayers for health. They are preparing to come back to the U.S. for furlough next year, which takes a lot of planning. And they are thankful that schools have been able to continue, and they are thankful for a growing number of friends, most who are not Christians, that they can meet with regularly. So you can remember those prayers and praises for them, for health, and for their plans for coming back next year to report to churches. But it's good that they're able to make all these new relationships with people, because that's what they want to do. They want to have those opportunities to get to know people and eventually share the love of Christ with them. So I would hope that you'll take some time to pray for them when we're finished here. And we thank the Gonnermans again for sharing their lives with us.
Yep. It's kind of fun to watch their kids grow up too.
Yeah. Yep.
Thanks so much for watching today. Make sure you come back next week to learn a little bit more about Guam, some more about our missionary story, learn about somebody else who's serving God somewhere in the world.
Yeah. We will see you later.
Yep.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.